Hey folks, John Cantera, the Double Broker Bounty Hunter for the Freight Fraud Task Force. Welcome to another edition of the Tic Toc Diner. It is 1 week after the Montgomery decision at the Supreme Court. So it's going to be kind of interesting to see how the dust is starting to settle. And that's what our panel is going to be discussing today. So hang out, grab yourself a menu and have a seat. Be right on with you as soon as I can hit the startup sequence.
For the Freight Fraud Task Force, welcome to the Tic Toc Diner podcast, where we serve up freight fraud with a side of prevention. Grab a menu and have a seat. Your server will be right with you. Here is your head chef and host, the Double Broker Bounty Hunter, John Cantera.
Another fun day, another Thursday, and so much going on in the industry over the last 2 weeks. Corca getting passed through the House. We had the Supreme Court decision going on. We had the CVSA blitz last week. So much going on that we can talk about. Let's go ahead and introduce our guests. Drew, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself real quick, please?
Drew Wilder, Vicarious Liability Risk Management. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep, you're good. You're good.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, Drew Wilder, Vicarious Liability Risk Management.
Drew's going to be talking a lot about the insurance side of what's all happening in the industry, and I believe Drew is sitting on a cruise or a beach at this point. So let's all be jealous of him. And pick on him a little bit for him being out in a nice sunny place. Sage, welcome. How you doing, buddy?
Hey, how's it going? Long-time listener, first-time caller. How's it going, brother?
First-time listener, but have guest host 2 other times. But then, glad to have you with us.
Everybody kind of knows me. Like I said, owner, operator, carrier, CDL, freight broker agent, life insurance agent. Pretty much, it's like the mafia. Once you're in, you can't get out.
Jack of all trades, master of none.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, ain't that the damn truth? Okay, Amy, introduce yourself.
Good morning. I'm Amy, dispatch carriers. How's everybody doing?
It'd be nice if you went a little longer so I actually could sip on my coffee.
I know.
But that's okay. Fine. Jen, you're fading in and out behind your background there.
Lighting. She needs lighting.
Well, no, my laptop is moved up right now. It's going to come down next week, but right now it's up, so it doesn't get me very good right now. But Jennifer from FRS Freight Recovery Specialist, FRS Collects, FRS Compliance now. So doing collections and compliance and safety. So glad to be here.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. I actually have a case that I'd like to hand to you. One of my former dispatch clients, and this is one of the things I want to hit this week. Modus has gone live. However, there are some hiccups. And one of the hiccups that I actually spoke with somebody at FMCSA about this yesterday, as they ported over all the motor carriers into Modus last week, and they did it all in one shot, by the way, which was probably not the smartest plan. Some information didn't quite make it. I have a motor carrier that I used to work with who got pulled over 2 days ago in Nevada for a level 1 inspection. Flying colors, no problems, but he got hit with an out of service for not having an authority. Now, he's had an authority for the last 3 years, uninterrupted, no issues, no problems. However, the officer couldn't see the authority in Modus. So he said, nope, you don't have an authority. So for some reason, authority information did not cross over for some carriers that's out there. I'll get Drew back up here. The authority information did not cross over for some carriers. So according to FMCSA, the L&I information, the legacy L&I system is still active and still reflects accurate status of an authority. So if you're unsure what your authority looks like in Modus, double check L&I. L&I is still accurate.
SMS is not.
SMS isn't always accurate. SMS updates only once a month, but SMS is still the operational system when it comes to examining safety issues for FMCSA.
A lot of that stuff
that's
is missing. Like I've gone in there and like there's no inspections for certain carriers, and then I know they've had inspections recently, or they'll be it won't be complete or whatever. Like I can't see their like when I go to the individual like hours of service, whatever substance, alcohol, whatever, you know, and then the vehicle maintenance. Like some of that stuff is missing.
Well, that certainly is a problem. I'm going to bring that up with my contact at FMCSA when we get off the show. Heck, hopefully he's watching and he's taking notes. But here we are. It's 1 week after the decision, and I'm looking at usage on the broker side. Brokers are trying to reevaluate how they need to structure themselves when they're doing carrier selections. What's the challenge that we're seeing across brokerages right now?
So the situation with the ruling, the problem with the ruling is that when a lawyer comes after me, it's not going to be on my procedures that I make. It's going to be something that I deviate from, right? So when they look at that, if I do the same thing over and over, and I've always done the same thing and the same checks, and I'm actually doing them. Let's pretend we're actually all brokers actually do them, and you're actually doing these checks. That's fine. But it's when you deviate that one time and something happens, a lawyer is going to find that deviation, and they're going to say, why did you do that? And was that the cause of this? So one of the problems, and of course the other problem is that each state can create their own theory in regards to what a safe carrier is. So like I've explained this, I put this out on X. This ruling actually hurt relationships because I no longer am capable of having a relationship with a carrier because that carrier could be good today, get an inspection, go out of service, and now my standards are I can't use them. And I can't just say, well, I know this carrier, I've worked for a long period of time. I can't deviate from whatever my standards are that could possibly put me in a situation that a lawyer could pick that apart. Now, lawyers are always going to pick that apart. And it's also the fact in regards to now I might have to hire, how much is my legal cost going to be on everything just to prove I did it right? Not after, but just to prove I did it right. How much am I going to have to start paying lawyers to prove that I do a good job? So it's hard for as a freight broker, it's hard to say, okay, how do we do this? So we're going to end up fronting a lot more things on the carrier. We might say instead of 1 million, it's going to be 2 million. Instead of this, it's going to be this. So I think that it's going to be a lot of pushback because we don't know truly yet because there's no legal justifications. There's no, court cases that have established enough data for us to know what the standards are. So it's very difficult because nobody really knows what the standards are.
Well, one thing that I would say is the sky is not necessarily falling. A lot of brokers went into panic mode over the course of the last week, but is the sky really falling for brokers, in your opinion?
It could be just because, like I said, if I've got an established carrier that I've used and that carrier is now what I believed was safe, and then all of a sudden they get a bad truck driver that leases onto that carrier that wrecks their CSA scores. Now they're out. That I might look at that and say, now I can't use this carrier. And they were a big portion of my freight. They were under contract freight. They were doing a lot of my spot market freight. So it all depends on, it could be that type of situation. The problem is we don't know. We don't know because what they're actually going to be starting to hit us for by adding us into some of this. That's the sky falling, basically, not knowing.
You talk a little bit about the liability side, and this is where I want to bring Drew in. Drew has a doctorate in jurisprudence. However, he's not a member of the bar. And folks, by the way, let me go ahead and preface this by saying, do not take legal advice off of a podcast, even if it's from an attorney. Okay, if you need legal advice, hire an attorney and then ask your questions. Okay, so just wanted to preface that. Drew, your thoughts from a liability perspective, what are the challenges that brokers really have to face in wake of this decision?
Well, first of all, John, I have a master's in jurisprudence, not a JD, so I just want to correct that.
Oh, so sorry.
When it comes to your previous speaker, I agree with him that you have to be consistent. Mm-hmm. And one of the things I was going to talk about today is that when it comes to this consistency, over the last year or two, there's been a few compliance agencies that have came out and basically said that if you utilize them for like insurance compliance, et cetera, that you have to make a pledge to only use them. And in a case where you have to make a pledge to only use them, and if there's another carrier that you want to use, and say the vetting was equal, and how could you determine whether the vetting was equal or not? But if they say if everything's equal, you're still to utilize their carrier versus another carrier. And to what your previous speaker said, okay, say you make that pledge. Now that pledge is a part of your SOP. Mm-hmm. You deviate from it because, face it, shippers, freight brokers, they got to get freight moved expeditiously every single day. They want to get it moved at a great price. So motor carrier A that's in the group that you made a pledge to only use is not available, or the rate's higher. Motor carrier B, they've been vetted by a different compliance company. They're in place, better rate. You use them, an accident occurs, guess what's probably going to happen? Yep. So, I would caution people in respects to making any kind of pledge. If you're going to make a pledge to only use a set of motor carriers that were vetted by, ABC compliance company, you need to understand that once you do that, you can't deviate from it. And if you do, it may come back to bite you if a loss occurs.
100%. 100%.
So, Sage, what do you think is then the appropriate standard when it comes to a broker doing vetting? And I'll defer to Amy afterwards because I really want to see what a carrier response is to this kind of thing. Go ahead, Sage.
The issue that this leaves me with, this is that if I go with a very tight, very restrictive, I have to maintain a very tight, very restrictive, which then let's say one of my good carriers falls into that category now, I can't use them. But so does that tell us that, well, maybe we should use the minimum, whatever that would determine? Again, we have no determination what this is. So for me, it doesn't allow me. When I interview carriers for long periods of time, I do over-dimensional freight. I could take 2 hours on the phone with a guy before I'll even decide to use him sometimes because I want to ask a bunch of questions. But that's how I used to do it, right? Because I made the call. But now it's those deviation problems. So I don't know how we don't, and this is a problem that I believe that the sky could be falling if we do this wrong, is that how it's very difficult to know if we should be very strict and never deviate, or our broker's going to be just strict enough, which might not be the best situation, just because there's more openings to that, if that makes sense. So it's hard to say. We don't know what to do at this point. Well, I know what I'm going to do, but I like I said, I do a specialty type of stuff. So I don't know what some of these guys that move these fast carriers quick, 1,000 loads, they're moving this. I don't do that. But those brokers, is this going to force them to be more loose and just go with a minimum and hope for the best? I don't know. This is the problem that we just don't know. And we're kind of locked into is deviation's the problem, to be honest now. And like he said, you pledge with somebody and that carrier is not available, and this carrier could be 100% better, but now you've just deviated even to something different. And a lawyer will pick that apart if an accident occurs, of course. So yeah, Drew's absolutely right.
Amy, what are you seeing on the carrier side? What are you dealing with trying to keep Ronnie on the road?
So far, I haven't had any issues. But again, that goes back to making sure that everything was done properly and set up properly. Any photo that was asked was sent. Any paperwork that needed to be sent was sent. I haven't had any issues so far. Knock on wood. I don't want any.
Are you anticipating that foreign dispatchers are seeing something different than what you are?
Oh yes, for sure.
Well, what do you think they're thinking right now? Well, what's in the head of a foreign dispatcher?
I I'm gonna take the guess that they may be looking for a different path or something different to do.
I would certainly hope so. But that's neither here nor there. Jenn, you deal with collections and compliance. I want to tap into the compliance side here. You've heard what Drew and Sage had to say about how they're trying to adjust. If a broker came to you today to look at what they need to be focused on, what would you tell them?
Safety scores. I mean, you want the safest carriers you can get right now because you're now liable if something goes wrong. And so you these carriers that are running on a fine line of, sketch with their safety score. What I mean is they're running high yellow, low reds. They're not going to get picked over carriers that are running green and yellow in their safety scores, because when at the end of the day, that broker is going to be liable if there's an accident. They're going to be really looking at those safety scores even harder than ever. So I anticipate the fall of a lot of carriers not being able to get freight because of this.
One of the things that I've been dealing with at the task force lately has been a different style of chameleon. You have some of these guys, particularly Eastern European, who show up with a different DOT number on the side of the truck. I want to highlight actually one during the Blitz that got a lot of attention. PK Logistics. That's with an X on the end of it. PK Logistics was identified by Search Carrier as the worst carrier for the Blitz. Okay. They were hit 24 times for inspections, out of service on 17 of them, with a 71% out of service rate. Horrible, horrible, horrible carrier. Now, let's go ahead and multiply how horrible they are by the fact that DOT issued an out of service order on the 12th, day one of the Blitz. This is a 2-truck carrier that got 24 inspections during the Blitz with a 71% failure rate. I have got a sinking feeling that we're going to see ghost carriers, chameleon carriers, however you want to define it, carriers showing up with different DOT signage on the side of their truck intentionally to avoid law enforcement detection against their own DOT numbers if they get an inspection. Do you think something like that could be happening, Jenn?
Oh, yes. Yeah, definitely. We can see that that's going to be a problem. I think that you're going to start seeing people sidelining drivers, specifically to those carriers that are having troubles with their safety scores. They're going to start sidelining drivers and keeping their better drivers in play. People are going to.
You mean the carriers are going to be sidelining the drivers?
Carriers are going to become more selective on who they hire and who they run. I mean, especially if they're not able to run all their trucks, if don't have loads for all of their trucks because of their safety scores, they're only going to run the drivers that are in the best position.
I'm going to roll this back uphill. Sage, you got a carrier that you use on a regular basis. They hired one rough driver. They told you, yeah, we know we got a really bad inspection off of this guy. We fired this guy. Will you turn around and continue to use that carrier?
Not if I've established that my standard operating procedures is ... and they now fall out of the ... right? I can't because I can't. This is what this is locking me into. I can't deviate. Now, I obviously I can, but I'm putting myself at risk for possibility, right? I can't because I don't want that risk. So that's what I'm trying to say. If that one carrier comes in and screws up a carrier that I was using, you've broken whatever my standard operating procedures are for bringing on trucks. I can't. That's the problem. That's the deviation factor. I mean, the best thing to do for a carrier to do is to basically keep themselves the best they can, right? Because there's going to be a standing operating procedure that might be low, but then on top of that, as long as they fall under this, each agent or each independent is going to have to, pick different things, which is the way it's going to work. It shouldn't work that way. But if I have a standard operating procedure of picking carriers that have this, and this, and that carrier now falls out of that category, and they go to do one of my loads, and I log in, and I see that they're now in the red when I don't accept the red, I can't deviate. Because if they get into a wreck, they're going to say, why did you continue to use them if your standard operating procedure is green, 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 and now they have green, green, red? That's a deviation. And that's what gets people saying, that's what gets torn apart in courts by lawyers. Deviation.
Drew, when it comes to deviation, I've been listening to a bunch of people talk about this. When they make exceptions, exceptions are, from what I'm hearing, exceptions are possible. But how do you defend when you issue an exception? And I'm specifically citing a webinar that I was on with Cassandra Gaines a couple of days ago. She said she had mentioned that exceptions are possible, but you have to be able to defend them. What would you say to that, Drew?
That's a hard one, John. That really is. Brakes got to move, of course, as I said before. And that's a hard one, John. I really couldn't say. I would say that if it's clear that there's some bad violations as was previously mentioned, I don't know that one would do it. That's a hard one. I can't really say on that one, honestly.
Fair. That's fair. And I don't think anyone's going to have a good solution. I already heard Sage's point, but I also know from a carrier perspective, and Amy backed me up on this, can one bad inspection then cause an entire carrier, whether they got one truck, 5 trucks, 10 trucks, 20 trucks,
absolutely
completely destroy them?
Yep. It's automatically going to put you at that 50% mark. One inspection is putting you, one field inspection, no matter what it is, it's going to put you at that 50%.
If you have a driver, if you got a fleet of 10 trucks and you have a driver that just went out there and got a terrible inspection, had all kinds of violations, out of service on it, brake pads aren't good, tires aren't inflated. Look, if that driver's not doing a pre-trip and you're not making that driver do a pre-trip and you're allowing them to continue to operate, then you might be doing that with everybody else, and I'm not going to take a chance.
That's true.
Yeah, I agree. Hey, John, I would like to say one thing though, if I could.
Please.
Even before the ruling came down, we always see a lot about fighting fraud, which is important, double brokering. See a lot about safety scores, which is very important as well. But, I'll say this, and I'll just reference a case that was accident happened back in 1998. It was litigated in 2006. And this involved BFI, the disposable waste management company. They subcontracted with a smaller motor carrier, and they were moving a load, and an accident occurred. And so, at any rate, BFI they were released from the suit via summary judgment. However, it was reversed on appeal, New Jersey Supreme Court. And basically, what they said is that the safety exception was argued. However, but what the court said, John, was this. Even though the driver had some issues, the vehicle wasn't registered, and there was defective brakes. Take all of that out of the equation, and BFI was still liable because at the time that the accident occurred, the tractor was not insured under the policy, neither was the driver. And I think that that's something that also has to be focused on, because again, there's folks out here now saying that they have systems where they're not the broker of record, they're a third-party compliance company, and they're telling people that if you go with them, when they approve a motor carrier, that coverage is going to be live 24/7. That's just simply not possible. And what I would say to anyone is simply this. If someone's going to tell you that, you should want them to show you the contract that they have in place between the insurance broker for that motor carrier to determine whether that's true or not. Because you got to understand that this third party company, whether they're in insurance or not, they're not the broker of record. They're in between, so they don't control the narrative. And if you see a situation where it says that they're going to be notified promptly Well, promptly means you're allowing a court to make that decision. I don't think that's going to do anything for you. And so I would just say that, again, if someone's telling you that going with them, the coverage is going to be live 24/7. If it's deviated from, if a tractor is dropped from the policy, they're going to know immediately. I don't think that dog's going to hunt. But again, I would want to see the agreement that they have in place with the motor carrier's insurance company and see what that contract says. Okay? Because if the contract doesn't say that when the policy lapses at 12:01, that that their system is going to be updated at 12:05 or at 8 o'clock the next morning. If it doesn't give a specific time or 2 days later, then again, it's ambiguous and you have nothing. And I don't think that's going to do anything for you, shipper or freight broker, if you're pulled into a lawsuit where the motor carrier, the tractor, or the driver wasn't insured under the policy. I don't think you're saying that these people said, a third party, I don't think that's going to do anything for you. So I would caution people about that.
It's not.
That's a very interesting point. One of the things that I am seeing on the fraud side as well is you have some fleets out there. We're talking like 10, 12 truck fleets, yet they're only insuring 2 or 3 of the trucks. Enough to have a policy to show multiple VINs on a COI as being covered. And when they declare what VIN number is going to be on the load to the broker, they mention one of the brokers that's on one of the VINs that's on the COI, but is that really the VIN that shows up? And then you find yourself in that catch-22 that you're talking about, Drew, with uninsured equipment, uninsured drivers, etc. But that I think that's a huge problem within the industry. How many of these drivers actually are insured, and how many of these carriers are saying, yeah, they're insured, here's a COI, and then 5 minutes later call the insurance company and remove the coverage?
Well, John, I'll say this, okay? But John, I'll say this, okay? Let's take the COI out of it, okay? Mm-hmm. And let's just talk about the fact that there are some third parties that's saying that the insurance, they have access, or the insurance broker of records is gonna update their system in real time. Okay, so forget about a COI. I'm not relying on the COI anymore, because some people are saying that the COI is stagnant. I'm in a different camp on that. But with that being said, you get away from the COI and you're just going off of this third-party insurance compliance's word. They're telling you that the information that they're getting is live 24/7. And if it changes, they're going to know immediately. Okay, so you got 5 units that were scheduled on the policy. Okay, and later on, one of those units are removed. What I'm hearing they're saying is that when it happens, it's live and you're going to know about it. I don't think that's reality. But even if it is, again, I would caution people to ask that compliance company to show you the contracts they have in place. You want to know what those contracts actually say, because if it doesn't give you a day later, it's going to be updated. An hour later, 2 hours later, again, you got nothing. And I don't think that you're going to be able to use that if you get pulled into a lawsuit because a motor carrier or a unit wasn't insured. You may have some type of remedy against the third party compliance company, but that's not going to do you any good at the present time. So I think people should do a real detailed job when it comes to vetting who they're going to use for their compliance.
So speed, which is what the industry has been focused on for the last 10 years, trying to get a new carrier onboarded in 15 minutes or less to be able to grab that spot load. That is not the way forward, in your opinion, Drew.
Right.
Okay, well, look, Sage.
Freight's got to move. And so all I'm saying is, freight's got to move. So just understand when you slow it down, you're taking chances. All right. It's just like if and I'm sure you've heard this before, John. If you're using a dedicated base of motor carriers, you're lowering your risk of something happening. If you're just grabbing guys off the load board, a different guy every single day, there's not enough time to vet those folks. Mm-hmm. And AI came into the picture. And there are even insurance companies that say that AI is not foolproof. Okay. It can't be completely 100% trusted. So I'm not saying don't use it. I'm just saying understand the trade-offs. speed versus, taking a little bit of time to vet the carrier. But again, if you're going to use someone off of low board, then speed is where it's at. Speed's where it's at. You're going to have to deal with when the shoe drops. You'll have to deal with that decision.
Sage, you've been a broker for quite some time.
Too long,
How long is an appropriate time period for a broker to onboard a new carrier in this post Montgomery day?
So,
in your opinion,
what we kind of do now, like I said, I was a freight broker on my own for a while. Now I'm I'm an agent. So a lot of times the brokerage is going to do that through tools that they have set up, a highway or something like that. And then that's going to be your first wave. But the second wave is I can't determine how long it's going to take somebody to onboard somebody. Some broker agents are just going to take whatever the brokerage says and just go with it. So I don't. I had, or I didn't. I had criteria because I did oversize. So even though my brokerage might say, yeah, they're good, I might look at their CSA and see, oh my God, they've got 4 cargo securement problems. They're not loading my overdimensional freight. Now my brokerage would have been okay but for me personally, it didn't. So it's hard to say how long it would take because I don't know if some brokerages are going to fall or some broker agents are going to fall into the category of, well, I'm not going to make any of these decisions. I'll just go. They made it already, so I can use you. Where, to be honest, that AI or whoever onboarded them is just, it's a setup. It's really not truly determining if the person's right for your load. So I don't know. Some are going to be better at it. I mean, I got 20 years at it. I'm better at it probably than somebody that's just got hired on at a 3-letter agency and they don't really know. They can't hear it. But again, I've been a truck driver. I've been an owner operator. Like, I know if I start talking to people, first thing I do is have a conversation about their equipment. Real truck drivers, and they're proud of their equipment. They know their equipment. Oh yeah, I'm this. I know my dimensions. I know this. I know my deck height. I know this. Compared to somebody that when I call and they're like, I'll say, what's the deck height of are you a low pro step deck? Are you a standard step deck? And they're like, oh, I don't, we're 53-foot step deck. I'm like, okay, are you low pro? What type of tires you want? Compared to the guy that if I ask that, he's like, yeah, I'm on 17.5s. I'm 34 inches. Like that guy, it depends on the person that they're talking to. And if I have to pull the information out or if they're like, boom, 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 boom. So, but it's hard to say the proper time for somebody. I know I'm just repeating myself, but it's hard to say that.
No, but you bring up a great point, and you also bring up the distinction between a brokerage and an agent for a brokerage. Do the agents share the same level of liability now?
Yes, they do.
That the brokerage is now facing.
They always had. Like as an independent agent, and I hope people listen to this because I've met a lot of people who don't think this is true. But if you're an independent agent, a 1099, you're not an employee, you're a 1099 for any brokerage, you can also be pulled into that lawsuit. I know a lot of, you could be pulled in because you were somebody deciding to pick that carrier. So if you're you could be a $10 million agency and they see that, oh, this agent also has money. You were a part of that and you're not covered like you were an employee would be covered. You're an independent. You should have your own OEM errors and emissions insurance. You should be understanding, all this stuff. But yes, an agent can get pulled into a lawsuit for making a bad decision on who they bring in as a carrier if something were to happen. You're not. Go ahead. Go, Drew.
Yeah. One thing I'd say, John, too, just to pick back off what Sage was saying, is that when it gets back to, say, these onboarding companies, I would one of the things I would be concerned about if I was a shipper. And by the way, I have time working for a freight broker, freight forwarder as well. And if I was in that situation, I would want to know, what they're liable for, right? If the contract with them doesn't hold them responsible for anything, then I would say, why are you using them? There's got to be now. Is that going to help you with, say, being brought into a suit for negligent hiring or whatever the case may be? I can't answer that question, but you want to have a remedy. You want to have some relief somewhere. You want to be able to, attach it or seek some relief from that third party. but the catch there is that okay, what does their insurance E&O say? Have they followed their due diligence? Because just because you have a policy doesn't mean it's always going to trigger. There's exclusions in it as well. And so, there's a lot to look at. And just for me, John, you've been knowing me for a long time, right? I'm not a fan of quake. I'm just not. I know that when the shoe drops, it's never good.
Correct. I agree.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I think it's going to take a little bit of time with people just sitting in this decision and observing and seeing what's going to happen for people to really kind of come around to what the necessary stipulations and requirements are going to be.
Well, most agents that I know of, Sage, they don't carry a separate insurance unless the contract with whoever they're working with requires them to.
Yeah.
Do you see that changing in the wake of this?
If I see, first of all, you should be getting your own contract insurance anyways, because somebody's going to make an error, somebody's going to make a mistake, and they're going to be like, "Well, that's not on us, that's on you." I don't know if I see it changing because I don't think enough agents are fully aware of their liability. They just think that, well, they picked them. The brokerage said it was okay for me to use them, so I just picked them. Real understanding that, no, that's not how it works. You can be included. So I think there's a lack of knowledge or lack of understanding or lack of, wanting to learn training to make you understand. I don't think people are just going to do it, to be completely honest, because I don't think they realize that they are a part of this. They can be easily a part of this lawsuit. I don't know. It's hard to say if people are just going to. So you're asking me if people are going to get smarter because of this? Probably not, because unfortunately, people don't like learning compliance. To be honest, I mean, they just don't. They don't reach out to people like Drew or me or whatever and say, "Hey, what should I do here? What do you think about this?"
Well, people already feel like they're so insurance poor, they're not going to want to buy more.
Yeah, and that's true too. But I just think that it's a lack of understanding and a lack of learning your industry that puts you in these situations in the first place. Like I said, this one's just chaos because there's 50 states that are all going to have 50 interpretations, and then you're going to have thousands of juries that, the lawyer sways it one way, and even though I did everything right, I could still be 10% liable. But that's what the jury found, and now I'm trying to fight that. What I mean? So it's a hard decision, and I think there's just a lot of learning we're going to do with cases and going forward to learn what the determination is, because I don't even know what it is, to be honest.
This next year is going to be interesting for sure.
Well, I heard Matt Leffler, the armchair attorney and a friend of the task force, he had mentioned on a show right after the decision came down that there's somewhere along the line of 900 state level cases that were waiting on this decision to take place. So he anticipates that some 900 brokerages or 900 cases that brokerages are about to be dragged in on because of this decision. How long does it take for a case like that to play out before we finally have a precedent that can kind of unify how this is going to be treated in the future? Drew, you got any thoughts on that?
It's hard to say. Some of them probably will get just litigated out. May not even make it to trial. It depends.
Does it have to go to trial in order to set the precedent, or can a settlement establish a legal precedent?
Well, a settlement, and again, I'm not an attorney, okay. So, but a settlement, or is it going to be non-disclosed?
Good point. Good point. Okay. I had not thought about that.
Right. And if it goes to trial, that could take a couple of years.
And let's remember what the statute of limitations are for these wrongful death or injuries, up to 10 years in Oregon, but most are 2 to 3 years for.
We had asked this of Matt Leffler as well. Do we anticipate any past accidents, past cases that are resolved to then reopen and drag brokers into those cases? Is that something that can happen?
What did Matt say about that?
He doesn't think that that's likely to happen. But I kind of wanted to get anyone else's opinion if they have any experience with that.
I would go with that. The guy, he's brilliant. I would go with him.
Yeah, I'd go with Matt.
I don't see a lot of old cases getting reopened, but I see more cases coming to light because there's more parties to now sue. Like going forward, the frequency will be more because there are more. Now you have not only the carrier, but you can drag the broker in too, or whatever.
Yeah.
So I'll see more cases coming to light, but I don't think old cases are going to get reopened.
Fair enough. So at this point, we're a week from the decision. We've heard a lot of experts issuing opinions on what's going on. I don't know if anyone managed to see or catch segments from the Freight Fraud Symposium that FreightWaves ran yesterday. There were quite a few people who made comments about this. Has the dust settled? Is everyone clear on what direction we need to go in, what we need to research as brokers, as carriers, dispatchers, etc., in how to get ourselves forward, how to make sure that we're protected moving forward?
I want to answer that one. We're never together on that stuff. Just so you know, I just want to say that we are never together on that. Nobody, not everybody always knows. I still have people that don't know about R&R Express. So, I mean, it shocks me, but it happens.
Hey, John, I feel like this. The folks that have in the past did everything they could to do it right. I think those people are going to continue to operate in that space. I believe the people that have been rolling the dice, I think a lot of them are going to continue to roll the dice, simply because some of them, I don't know how other way to put it, they just don't know any better. And I think they're just going to, and then some folks are just going to be in that space of, it's not going to happen to me.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I agree. Unfortunately, I do. I believe, and I feel the same way. I do feel that there's a lack of training from, like I said, I was a brokerage and a broker agent. And I feel like there's a lack of training from the brokerage portion down to, let's say, the agents. And I think that would be one of the first steps to make sure that you're doing right. Having that standard operating procedure down to the people that are answering the phones. But I think what's going to happen is, go ahead.
No, don't say. But I'm glad you brought that up, because how do you go about doing that? Because again, I work for a motor carrier, freight broker, freight forwarder, right? Did it for over 17 years, and what I've seen over that time is that training's great, but there is a difference between being trained and being formally trained. Right? There's a difference, and you have people that have been doing it the wrong way for years, training someone else to do it the wrong way for years, and they're not willing to go out and get the proper training from subject matter experts. Or it could be a situation where years ago, 20-some years ago, I was at a training conference, and the speaker said something that was very profound at the beginning of this 3-day conference. He said that it's great that you guys are here. The bad part is that only like 5% of you are going to be able to take what you learned and put it back in the workplace. Everybody else is just here for window dressing, right? So what do you do with that?
There's a difference between being formally trained, and then actually putting it into practice and enforcing it throughout your whole. That's what you're saying, I believe. Yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so my answer to that would be I do feel like I took when I took my insurance and I passed the state test. I passed the state test for commercial property and casualty. I think that if you're going to be brokering freight, if we're going to be doing this type of freight, I don't understand why there isn't a re-education, mandatory re-education like I have in insurance. And I don't understand why there isn't some type of test to be able to put, to establish, okay, you've taken this test, but you have to continue to do re-education in this industry at some portion. And if I'm going to be if I'm going to have a freight agent, not just a customer service person, let's say, but a freight agent moving freight, I feel that person should also have to establish proper, now I'm not just talking about YouTube, watching a bunch of YouTube videos, continuing education, not re-education, sorry, wrong thing, continuing education so that they can maintain that ability. And I just don't know why that was never added or put in place for freight brokerages. it's in other industries. It's in insurance because we realize how important insurance is. Well, this industry is just as important, but yet we don't have any of this continuing education so that we can and this industry has changed so much that you could easily take continuing education courses just to learn the new stuff.
But we could apply that to carriers too. Why would we not have to have continuing education for carriers to keep up to speed on the new laws and legalities that influence the industry? I mean,
well, that's just it. And we don't. And if we're not going to tell them that, hey, you have to take some type of continuing education from a certified, licensed place, or how certified placed. I think I'm certifiable sometimes, but certified place. I don't think we're gonna. You're right. I don't think we're gonna have improvements because, like you said, if somebody's been doing it the same way, the whole time, they're gonna teach that, and we have that in this industry. You have no idea how many times I run it. Well, I do that all the time. I'm like, well, that's not legal.
Just so you know.
You know what I mean? So yeah, you're right, Drew, and it's a great question. But I think that should be some of the stuff that we should have been putting out there to make things better, and we're just not. Right?
I almost worry that some of this will make it worse for some carriers because we have a problem with carriers caring about their safety scores right now. I mean, there are people out there running safety scores 97, 98, 90, and high score does not win, folks. This is not a basketball game. We're playing golf, all right? So you need to have a lower safety score, but we got carriers that are out there with 20 trucks running at 98. Oh, it's okay. We're just gonna get a risk retention group today. And okay. And so I worry about those carriers continuing to skate as long as they can until they get into an accident or kill someone or damage some cargo that puts them out of business. They're going to continue to skate as much as they can.
Yeah, that's a great point too. That's a great point, Drew. You're right. You're absolutely right. How do we make these? And those would be those changes there would be the ones that would be making differences. If you had to say, yep, I took this, continuing education. Yep, I was, I passed my test and had every 2 years. I have to actually take moral to make sure I'm a good moral person. But this is the stuff that I passed, and I don't want to hear it from any one of you. I passed. No, just kidding.
Liar.
This is the stuff that we just don't have this type of. But that would be, I feel, the stuff that should be done at the level of logistics, like logistics meaning freight forwarder, broker, that level, not the trucking aspect. I do believe it should be something at the logistics level, because there is a lot of unknowns and and I do believe some people just don't know. They're making a mistake. They're not. They just don't know they can't do this, right? And they're doing it.
So it's not a malicious mistake. It's just a total ignorance.
Yeah, I think there's some of that. There's that going on too, which it's not malicious. I do believe that. Not all of them are, but some of them are, but not all of them are. But no, I feel like you, Drew. I have no answer to that one other than what I said, because it's crazy. But you're right. And how do we properly make sure that they're properly trained? Because what happens at the truck show? The minute you want to talk about compliance, everybody leaves the room and goes to the bathroom and has a smoke outside. Room's empty. Oh, you're talking compliance? Gotta go.
Yeah.
I hope that is changing now, moving forward. Yeah, I've heard the horror stories from Dale Prax on a couple of situations that he had seen like that. I'm wondering. What was that?
The whole room clears out. There'll be 5 people in there while they're talking about safety and compliance, and everybody else out getting a beverage and a smoking or whatever.
It's kind of mind-boggling. Now, clearly, there's going to be a renewed focus on safety and compliance. There's going to be a renewed focus on training and education. So, winners and losers. Who's really winning in this? I know last week we were saying the big players, the big guys, the megas are winning big time on a decision like this because they can afford it. Are we still feeling that way? Are we still saying that, big guys win over small guys? Well, what's this looking like?
Who's going to go first?
You.
All right. Obviously lawyers for the win. Insurance.
Yeah, without a doubt, lawyers win on this one wholeheartedly.
I think insurance companies are definitely going to start benefit from the added pressure of because remember, your insurance doesn't just cover the payout. A couple things I want to say here real quick. One, I know some people say, why did the insurance settle, right? But when insurance settles, they close the case. It's closed. That's kind of a good thing sometimes, because when insurance denies, that kicks out the $1 million, and now you can kind of sue for anything because the insurance denied the claim, basically, right? So now they can still go to court. I think insurance is going to be, but a part of your insurance payment is for legal. They fight on your behalf. They hire lawyers and fight on your behalf. So it's not just a payout. So when people are like, "Oh, I have $1 million payout," that they might pay out $100,000, but there was $100,000. I don't know. I'm just making up numbers, make it life easier. There was $100 in legal fees in there also, right? That you didn't have to hire a lawyer to do. So I think insurance companies are also going to be. I can't say that they're going to benefit from this. To be honest, they're going to up their fees, but they're still going to have to possibly fight more, and this could be bad for them because they could be taking even more losses down the line, depending on these lawsuits. So I know,
which then translates back into big problems for both carriers and brokers who utilize some form of liability insurance.
So I feel the carriers also going to be hurt somewhat, because a lot of brokers are going to start to say, "Oh my God, what do I do?" And their knee-jerk reaction is going to be, "Well, now you need $2 million liability, or now you need this, and now you need that."
And rates are going to go up.
Right. And I think the benefit is the lawyers, but I do believe until we can get this fixed, everybody in the industry is technically on the loss right now until this stabilizes. Because remember, businesses are built on consistency, not ups and downs. So we need a stabilization here and determinations on things before I think the whole industry is hit right now, to be honest, except for lawyers.
Right.
They're
Winners
not
and losers. The industry is losing. The general public is winning, because hopefully this will make safer carriers out there on the road.
Hopefully that's true. Now, when was the federal minimum of $750,000 minimum liability put into place for carriers? How long ago was that?
80s.
Was that too? But did that come? Was it 1980?
I think so. Well, I think so, because that's kind of when the 750 was established, because at that point, like people don't understand what deregulation did is you couldn't get into the industry. Like, even if you had a direct customer, you basically had to acknowledge it. Hey, I want to come in, and then other people could come in and that were already carriers could come in and say, no, I got that. You're out. Don't worry about it. So when deregulation hit, they basically said, well, everybody has to have we're going to have a playing field for insurance, and they came up with 750. So that's what 1980, which is a long time ago.
That's when it happened.
Okay, so mostly the industry standard. The industry standard is sitting somewhere around the 1 million mark. That's what most people are looking at for vehicle liability. Do we think that's going to go up? I hear a lot of people saying they expect that to go up, and they expect it to go up a significant amount. Sage, do you see it going up, and where do you see it going to?
My customers are already at 2 million. So my customer for a legal load is at 2 million, and for an overdimensional load is 5 million. So I've already seen it up because, again, remember, corporations and companies, their lawyers are usually not transportation lawyers. They're just lawyers, right? Or, specific corporate lawyers. So they all will automatically just say, nope, 2 million, nope, 5 million, because they just want that coverage. Not even.
And then a lot of these smaller carriers are not going to be able to afford it. Fuel's up, everything's up, food's up, everything is up. They cannot afford any more insurance.
Well, that's where I think a lot of freight, there could be a time where freight broker, I can get contingent insurance, but you have to understand contingent insurance only covers you if you have insurance to the same level that you have insurance, right? But I do see I think a lot of brokers are going to come out and have to get some type of, insurance policies to help cover that aspect of that load, or trip insurance. We have something called trip insurance for use for that.
Well, Sage, freight brokers go out and get this contingent, coverage, and like I say, I don't sell insurance. I'm not an insurance agent or broker. But what I do know is that a lot of these contingent policies, there's a due diligence process that goes along with it. And so you buy that policy, you don't follow due diligence, you may very well not have any coverage.
Correct.
And so my thing is simply this, guys. I hear the argument about, okay, the rates going up, and so forth. I get it. But the reality of it is I just look at it differently. When I was a safety director, I took over for a small motor carrier. This was years ago. It had been on board 6 months, and one of our drivers severely injured a person, and it was bad. And we had $1 million in coverage at that time. This is over 25 years ago. Okay. And, I looked at it from the perspective of, the plaintiff wanted $1.9 million. I knew that if we couldn't get it lowered, it would put us out of business. I was successful with getting it settled under the $1 million mark. However, when that was over and I met that guy and I met his family, $10 million wouldn't have been enough. Okay. Because our driver ran over this guy. He could no longer fly kites with his son. He could no longer stock car race with his son. All the things that were important in life, he could no longer do.
I agree.
And so I just, sometimes some people, when I hear them get all up in arms about, well, this jury verdict, some jury verdicts are out of hand. I get it. Right. But at the same time, we're talking about,
life
again,
changing.
If life changing. If you offer me $10 million, but I can't play flag football with my son anymore, I don't want the $10 million. I don't.
No, I agree with you 100%. I agree. That's why at one time, like I said, Matt, the armchair attorney, said he told the story about the jet that crashed, right? The guy ejected out and hit the ground, and they came and they find him. And he went back to commander. He's like, man, sorry about the plane. He's like, hey, it's a $50 million plane. He's like, your life is worth more than that plane, bro. You ejecting was good. That's a good thing. We got you. So how do you put a measurement on somebody's
quality of life?
At work, quality of life. And you're right. And this is where I hear a lot of drivers, they hate insurance, they hate insurance. But you're right. Think about, okay, what was that? What if that was your wife? Would that 1 million be enough for your wife being crippled?
Right. And I was just gonna say, people already think we're insurance poor, and they're not wanting to go deeper into it. But I think you're gonna see a lot more insurances having to come up with the errors and omissions, with higher rates, with a lot of things. Go ahead, Drew.
Yeah, I mean, I listen. Insurance is important, and it's very important to have. I'm just saying because, and it's just the rates right now to pay for the insurance coverage. A lot of people's have doubled, and it's not because of an accident.
Folks just need to get more serious about safety. That's at the end of the day. That's what it's about. People got to get more serious about safety.
There's more cars on the road than there ever been before. There's more four-wheelers out there. There's more people. You've got to have drivers that pay attention. You got to vet your drivers better when you're hiring them, carriers. You got to pay, you got to pay attention. You got to look at those PSPs and look at those resumes, to what's happened prior to them coming to you. And don't just willy-nilly hire the first drivers that come along because you got to fill a truck. Be a little more selective, because ultimately it's going to impact your bottom line.
And don't skimp on maintenance.
Right.
There's so many different things that you have to pay attention to.
There is a cost to preventative maintenance, but there's a reason for that preventative maintenance and what it saves in the end. So, there's a cost to everything. I think that, as I was saying, the winners in this hopefully is the general public, the losers, the industry as a whole, just in the amount of money it's going to put up. But also, I think it's going to affect those carriers that are skating with those higher safety scores, that don't want to pay the higher insurance, and they're going with risk retention groups. They're going to get vetted offloads. Brokers are going to take care of that for us. Those carriers are going to go by the wayside. It's going to shrink capacity, and it's going to make rates go up more.
Well, you remember the initial responses of the CVSA Blitz Week. 1 in 3 were out of service. 1 in 3, where traditionally it's 1 in 5. Okay, so huge spike in out of service violations.
Well,
wow.
I'm just stunned at the one you were talking about earlier, John. It has 2 trucks, and they had how many inspections and how many out of services for 2 trucks in 1 week?
By the way, that's after DOT issued an out of service order for the DOT number.
So they just kept running anyway.
They kept running throughout the CVSA week, yes. And I think the final tally was 307 inspections in 10 weeks. It was absolute insanity, but we're seeing a lot of that.
Well, why does the FMCSA continue to let that kind of a carrier stay on the road then? Why have they not put
they issued the out of service order, and they issued the out of service order fairly quickly compared to most cases that I've seen of this type. So I do have to give credit to FMCSA to finally working on stepping up. But there's a lot that has to go on for FMCSA to do things. They have their hands tied to a certain extent. And that's one thing that a lot of people in the industry don't yet understand. There's a lot of legislation sitting out there in Congress right now. 23 different bills sitting in Congress directly related to trucking sitting out there. Folks, if you haven't talked to your senators and your congressmen about these bills, you need to do so. You need to do so soon, because senators and congressmen are about to start their push towards re-elections, and the legislative agenda will fall by the wayside. So we've got to push things like Corca, Delilah's Law, and some of the other key legislations that's out there that's designed to improve safety across the industry. There's a lot going on, and we're not going to be able to sit here and resolve this in a 1-hour podcast. We're going to be seeing changes taking place for the next 6 to 12 to 18 months as court decisions are made and as brokers and carriers make changes to how they do business. Let's go ahead and do a final run. We're at the top of the hour. I want to give everyone the opportunity to do plugs, etc. Drew, you got any final thoughts?
Again, man, at the end of the day, it's about safety. And I know you introduced me. You wanted me to talk about insurance, but again, to the listeners out there, I don't sell insurance. I'm into compliance, starting with the agreements that, the motor carrier freight transportation service agreement, and insurance verification is kind of, the niche that we are in at VRLM.
And your company, and how do people reach you?
You can reach me on LinkedIn, Drew Singleton Wilder. You can just reach me on LinkedIn.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Sage, plugs, final thoughts, etc.
Yeah, you can find me at Sage Outcast on X, or you can reach out to me for either insurance quote, compliance type stuff like that at sageoutcast.com. Or you can, like I said, go to my show and you can text me on the number that's for the call-in number. So welcome to do that.
Fantastic. Appreciate it. Amy, final plugs, thoughts?
Yep, it's Amy with 3A and Dell, dispatch carriers. Those who need to reach me know how to reach me. Shoot me over a message, call me. That's it. Thanks for having me.
Jennifer.
If anybody wants to sit and kind of talk about these things, you can come over to Sage's Discord. Just ask one of us for an invite. We're in there all day long discussing these things throughout the day as they come up. Also, you can, if you need help with your collections or safety and compliance, you can reach me at frscollects.com, Jennifer at frscollects.com. So,
Jen, you also do data queue?
Yep, that's part of the safety and compliance, updating data queues, helping to update MCS 150s, things like that.
Cool. Folks, panel, thank you so much. Really do appreciate you taking the time to talk today. I definitely want to reassemble this panel within the next few months as we see these patterns continue to evolve post Montgomery and see what the future of the industry is starting to hold. Clearly, the industry is changing. What it's going to morph into, we're not entirely sure yet. Is the sky falling? No. But it is definitely changing, and we need to pay attention, and we need to pay attention very closely.
Drew, catch some sun for me.
I'm trying.
Get on the beach, Drew.
I hope you enjoy.
Yeah,
thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thanks for taking the time, folks. Ladies and gentlemen, your check is on the table. Please tip out your server, and we will catch you next week here at the Tic Toc Diner.